Centuries ago, the trip to India would take, I don't know, few months, and like a horse we should swim the sea. And the title of my poem is "For the Horse Who Swam Across the Sea." The horse who swam across the sea can't only be the story of one morning. I called him from the foam of the waterways so that he could eat the sun from my hands and help me to build my world. But why is he trying to convince me that sorrow is his profession and that before his first step he sent a knife on the way which fell off his ribs? I caught the blade to save it in the sand. My eyes cannot become a window, battered by storms, sword and tears. The sand is a master of passing. I can sip it in my hands for eternity and for time. And time taught me how to hope, so that I may erase dying from the eye of the horse. He will only fall asleep, and I will catch the same dreams of death for us both, over and over again, turning them into a melody that never ends. I will no longer be important that a long time ago the white horse was saddled by white people of the East. They tuned the sound of his hoofs with the clinking of swords and the screams of those who begged to live. It was not in vain that he sat with them along the water and tell them stories of how they were once convinced by fish. And that was the reason why during war they spoke with the language of flowers and bring to life the memory of the secret of grasses, which has withered long before he had tasted them like a manna, gathered in the reflection of the moon on the surface of the sea. And he now rests his head into my lap. He does not wait for my tears, nor joy, because I had unknowingly ridden forgetfulness. He merely nods softer than silence. Every action suddenly begins to distract us from our awareness of being, him, me, and anyone else. But in the wakefulness of his breath, there is more than an order. I know I have to release him into death, accept my parting without any goodbyes, so that he could lastly swim to the shore, where his winged brother will sing a song to him about a horse who swam across the sea. Barbara was often awarded with the prizes for poetry, and perhaps do you have some poems from that part?
I could read you a poem which is about Mother Teresa. It's part of my book, monologues, which means that I try to speak like in drama in the name of some other humans or beings. Some they are historical personalities, some I made up, but this was my way how to combine poetry and epic and drama together. It's like in Shakespeare's plays, Hamlet, so the monologue of a person in trouble mostly. So I'm going to read, if you agree, or perhaps later you will have some questions, or I don't know what would interest you, but perhaps to one or two more poems from that. So it's the setting is that there is a new nun in at Mother Teresa, and the Mother Teresa is telling this to her. So Mother Teresa, Mother Prior to a New Nun, Calcutta at the end of the second millennium. Christ has knocked on the door. One more. He has no legs. Probably they were cut off by his parents to make him a beggar. A wound instead of his face. He has no strength left to move his wooden chariot. Christ is waiting for you in front of the door. Hurry up. He could be squeezed by the people running from the police. He could be eaten by the hungry wild dogs. Hurry up. He knows that he's going to die. That is why he has knocked on your door. You don't know if he is the true Christ. Short hours of sleep are passing into awakened fear. Does God exist? Through the door fissures, the light pours into your room. There is no God. The world is abandoned, godless. Christ is waiting in front of your door. White shadows are running across the dark garden. You will hold his weightless body in your arms, his look in yours, the first and the last one. You will know then, he is your child. Go now. So this is a poem from, and perhaps another, also with biblical motives. This is a poem of Noah's wife. She was mentioned in the Bible, but without a name. So the title is Woman Without a Name, Noah's Wife After the Flood. And she is speaking after, just before the Noah will let the animals out of the boat. For months, for years, I've been hiding here in the hold. Out of pity, I descended into the groaning, moaning animals. It's dark, damp, stifling, unbearable stench. Crocodiles opening long snouts of teeth, snakes hissing, lions roaring with hunger, over all the thunderous stamping of caged elephants. In the beginning, I trembled at the darkness and noise, and of the incomprehensible swarming of creatures unseen, with only premonition, spiders, mice, millipedes, scorpions, large and small, all of them moving in monstrous formations as the invisible water, dark and ungraspable. I became one with them, feeling our total being, warm, damp and stifling. 40 days, 40 years. We got older, settled down in our grief, our hunger. Down here there is no God. In the safe haze we wait for the bearded face of someone fulfilling God's commands. I hear noise. Noah's releasing the animals back to the land. I lean my face against a crack in the door, and light pours all over me, the light I had forgotten. When my husband, who has forgotten me, opens the door, into his chest filled with wind and sun, a herd of animals will rush. A multi-tailed body with thousands of glittering eyes, moving with every premonition. First, me. So that's from me.
Now it's my turn. I often find an inspiration for writing in nature. So the title of next poem is Morning Poem for Birds. And probably you're curious how the Slovenian language sounds. So I will read a part in Slovenian language and part in English, so you could catch not exactly the meaning, but probably mostly the sound of our nice language. We live under the mercy of birds who gave us their nests, still warm from the heat of their wings. Bivamo po milosti ptic, ki so nam odstopile svoja gnezda, še topla od kril. Which is why I'm not afraid to fly, zato se ne bojim leteti. I'm only afraid of history, which documents shot down planes more thoroughly than the force of birds, and wipes from memory the rulers of our world. Strah me je le zgodovine, ki beleži sestreljena letala natančneje od ptičjih padcev in briše iz spomina vladarice sveta. Birds teach their children before their first flight the word earth, so that they can show them the sky. Ptice pred prvim poletom učijo govoriti svoje otroke besedo zemlja, da jim lahko razkažejo nebo. From high above, we humans seem small. We build houses from wounded birds from clouds as homes for our lost dreams. We move them between the stars, like the tents of nomadic tribe along the desert, sewed with mirages of winged creatures made of sand. And in their eyes, we look for support for our soul in a well where water had long died out. V pogledu iz višav smo ljudje majhni. Iz oblakov gradimo hiše za ranjene ptice kot domove za naše izgubljene sanje. Selimo jih med zvezdami kot šotore nomadskega plemena po puščavi, posejane s prividi krilatih bitij iz peska. In v pogledu iz njihovih oči iščemo upornike za dušo v vodnjaku, kjer je že zdavnaj presahnila voda. One single tear of a bird can permanently quench a man's thirst. He has but to sprinkle some seeds on his window sill without expecting the deed to be returned. Ena sama ptičja solza lahko zavedno odžeja človeka. Samo zrna mora natrositi na okensko polico brez misli, da bo storjeno povrnjeno. I try over and over again to feed the birds. I sow in the sky, I plant seeds in the water, I wrap the rocks, stones, sand, I ripple among birds' chatter, and I take the fluffy laughter as payment for my effort or as a crumbs of hope. Vedno znova poskušam nahraniti ptice. Orjem na nebu, sejem v vodi, žanjem skale, kamne, pesek, kolobarim med ptičjim ščebetom in jemljem puhasti smeh kot plačilo za trud ali kot drobtine upanja. That life is merely a learning period about how to be born into a bird's heart. Da je življenje le učna doba v tem, kako se roditi v ptičje srce. So now you catch a little bit of the sound of our language, and sometimes when I ask people who first time heard our language, they say that it's like whispering of birds. I don't know what association did you get it, but I will be happy if you will get something similar to that. But Barbara, if we a little bit continue our conversation, I said that often I found inspiration for my writing in nature. Where do you looking for it?
It's well, I think for me poetry is like some special moments where I can grasp what life is for me in its totality. So the language has this power for me where I can invent my own language, and this language is like healing in the sense that I can make sense from very different or painful experiences. So it's nature. It's true that nature in Slovenia is really very beautiful for me. I was born there. It's very diverse, from snow in the mountains to the sea, to the flat lands in the east, or these Toscana-like hills in the southeast. So everywhere it's very green. Slovenia has the second most, it's covered with woods. The first is Finland in Europe, and then Slovenia. And it has a lot of small streams, rivers. But of course, for me, is also important how a human being is governing or somehow managing the environment, the totality of environment, and what we do to each other or to other beings which live with us, like plants, animals, and other creatures. So I try in my poetry somehow to harmonize, to find the totality, the wholeness of it. And what?
Barbara, I think you're talking about ethic dimension of poetry. It's like poetry have to put together the beauty, like the aesthetic and ethic function. And I think when we are trying to do something in that way, we are on the way that we might write something good.
I hope it has to have meaning for people, and I hope to bring also to myself when I'm writing. I say in metaphor, to bring strength and some light into heart, in that we don't lose hope or the joy of life, the joy of being here. So this.
That reminds me of something. When I was teenage, let's say, not so many years ago, trying to find the answers on some main questions, I read a lot. I still read a lot. And one of my favorite authors, it was Rabindranath Tagore. It's the right pronunciation. And I still remember some of his words. Barbara, I will ask you for help, because I wrote it down in my diary when I was 15, and I still have it that. And it was some kind of guide in those, you know, turbulence years of being young adult. So it's going so, as I remember. Do konca življenja bom poskušal svoje življenje ohraniti čisto. If you try to translate me.
Till the end of my life, I will try to keep my life, my heart, my life, my soul clear, not innocent or pure. Yeah.
In naj se živo dotika vseh mojih udov.
And that pureness may touch all my limbs with vigor. Yeah.
Thank you, Barbara, for that help. And I'm very happy to be now really there in the country of Rabindranath Tagore. To find inspiration for writing in nature is one part of my writing. The second is I really like Greek mythology. And I did a book of poetry which is mostly based on the old Greek gods. And I was trying to find a way how one old Greek god, which I understand as a symbol, could speak with me about nowadays problems, nowadays world. So I choose Ares' lamentation. Ares is god of war. And how perhaps he's trying to die, but we people all the time are keeping him alive. So I will read Ares' lamentation. Ares' lamentation. It is a lie that I was born immortal. The divine Hera made me on the side, as she, in insatiable rage over her husband, wrapped her legs around the soldier as he lifted his sword up to the sky and cursed God. I had to kill my father first to be able to drink bloody milk. And I saw the glory of battles in the stars long before reading my first book that glorifies victory. I grow from the guts of the defeated for about a meter into greed of wolves and the poison of a green woodpecker. Then it was no longer difficult to become immortal. It is more difficult for me, Ares, now to die, even though I'm getting increasingly tired of living. I'm obsessed by the desire to have my childhood grow within me and to embrace my aging and the end of my journey, but I do not know the memories of a child. I wrote a book, I planted trees, I made countless sons. Everything I did as a man and as a god. Is this not enough to ensure my death? My sons have divided the world so many times, I don't remember its beginnings. I must feel pride. They have outgrown my lust. Their grandchildren know more about war than I do, yet they cannot kill me. They are numbered by honor and fear that they will would not be able to bury me. There is no earth, no water, no fire. There's nothing that could carry on my secrets. Restless, I gazed at the crippled man who scratches my lamentation on the walls of his own prison, only because he wants to forget that I was everywhere, and that we are, by testament of murdered, more than brothers. Let him pray for a sky without stars, where our fates are written. And let him patiently wait to catch word for those who knew me and were able to forget me. But herein lies the power stronger than power. I know I will vanish slowly by the drop returning to my mother, so she would be able to give birth to the scent of passing. When I cease to be so much as a memory, I will vanish in hopes that there never was and never will be another like me. Barbara and me, we are often leading the workshops for young writers, for writers. Once we were together in jury, where we have to choose the best young writer, and when we had a meeting, I must admit, I was a little bit nervous. Oh my God, which poem she will choose? And I guess it was the same with you. But occasionally we actually choose the same poem for young writer. It was really the best. And I didn't ask you at the time, but what were your, let's say, measures, or in which way you are looking what's good poetry for you?
Poetry is very personal, so there is no outer system how I could judge if this is a good poem or not to me, but I just try to be open for the poem to come to me, to speak to me, and if I feel addressed by a poem, then I start a kind of dialogue with this. I always try to learn something more, something new, some new perspective, and if the poem can bring that to me, a new world, I usually speak about the poetry landscapes. So if there is a new landscape, fantastic or imaginative landscape, that then I know for sure that this is a good poem. That's my measurement. My measures would be very physical ones, like I feel it in my stomach or in a hair, or my heart starts beating faster, or I start to cry, or whatever. So this kind of measure.
But I guess also when we are writing, I must admit, sometimes I cry. Actually, when I finished the poem, I don't know, perhaps because attention, because of relief, because it's ended, because I'm satisfied with that, or because I'm not satisfied with that. But the big problem I have when I write a love poetry, oh my God, love. And I remembered when I also wrote a first love novel, and I asked my colleague, oh my God, how to do that? It's so hard because I don't want to be sentimental, I don't want to be pathetic, and here I don't have something, you know, about everyday life problems. It's just love. And he said to me, you will see, that's the hardest job of a writer, to write about love. But it will bring you a lot of joy when you finished. Do you agree, Barbara?
Yeah, that's the most simple things are the hardest for me. So to be just simple and open, yeah, it's not so easy, at least for me. And but I'm looking at you now, very young faces all around, and I would like to hear perhaps what you are interested. What are you students of literature, or yeah, mostly, or from school? And perhaps you could ask some questions, or so that we could have a dialogue. Perhaps. What do you think? Uh-huh.
I want to say that, sorry, now is the interaction session. So,
It's the end of session.
yeah.
Ah.
So the audience will ask
Okay.
questions.
Uh-huh.
Can interact with them.
Yeah.
So
No. I mean, it's like in Maine. You could ask questions, and if we could answer with a poem, we could do that. So I remember I was very shy. You won't believe it. I won't be able to speak, even I will be, with my closed eyes, that nobody will see me. But it's a good job to do it and just encourage yourself and said, yes, I'm also writing a poetry. And perhaps what kind of problems do you have when you are trying to catch metaphor and you do not know, is it good enough? Is it deep enough? Will somebody will read it? But as young writers, we are all going through that illness, because at the end we survive and we are becoming better and better. At least I hope so. And I remember the words of Rabindranath. No, it's about Maria Rilke, Rainer Maria Rilke. It's one of my favorite poets, and he wrote letters to a young poet. And I remember that he said, well, you must not only trying to be a better writer, a better poet, it's also that you are trying to be a better human being, a better man. And when you will put all those things together, you can definitely be sure that at least you will be honest when you're writing a poetry. And when you are completely honest, that is the good way that someday you could be on a stage and you could say, well, I'm a poet. Please ask.
I just encourage you. Perhaps they just told us that it's going towards the end of this session, to come to us and ask us if there is something you are interested in. Do you think we should read?
Barbara, perhaps for the end, one of your love poetry. Do you have it with you?
Yeah, I could. I'll see. Yes, one poem for the end. Okay. And one.
You have to find it.
Okay.
So, two poems only for you, young people, also for older, but especially for you, to encourage yourself and to write poetry. This is perhaps a little bit sad poem about a man who lost his wife. But anyhow, he believes that one day he will meet her again. Just once, for my wife Rachela. Just once would I like to perfectly remember your hair, slightly intoxicated by the image. I spread its scent along the pillow. I impulsively chase after the solidity of the shape and finally kneel before the dancing dervishes of the air. Do not fret over this irrational behavior. It is not in vain. I still exist because of it. I can compose the color of your face. Check in the mirror if there is enough transparency. I can see grass growing over my eyes. You're lending me your lips to prevent me from escaping into the operation composed of the conflicts within me. They are difficult to resolve without you. I had to reject the reality which I had spent so much time creating. Everything is the same and yet different. Death has spared you from the foul stench of my old age and from seeing my secretly whipping the pea stains from the floor around the toilets and multiply my freckles and hide my tremors. It might be insulting to live at my age. I expose my fragile being in all the places where we used to sit. Angels are fluttering inside the empty coffee shop and whispering that you are very close by. I try to measure you with the first glances. I pull you from within me to sink into myself, where you would take to me in your high-pitched voice, just like the time I was peeling the scabs of your skin and shaving your head. You recognize the figures of death. Let me be your pupil in the dreamless nights. Let me unplug my ears with your hair then, and let me hear your voice. Ask me if I ate, I took my medicine, I fed the pigeons and washed my hands. The same hands you taught to speak love. Maybe that is why my body still exists. You do not allow me weariness from my claim. Whatever I got myself into, I must persist. You are also taking care of our residence, somewhere far, far away, and building our palace. I know that once I'm there, you will let your long hair fall down, and that once there, I will read you just once the poem for my wife, Rachela.
This is a poem about the two. So the title is Two, a loving couple. They take off their clothes, take off their shoes, remove jewelry and watches, strip to the bare skin. They strip further, stroking with their hands. They take off their professions, their names and habits. With patient kisses, they strip off their past loves, their expectations. With small bites, their age, their lust. With their mouths, they strip off each other's sex. They take off their childhood. This takes a long time. Mother, father, they wash off by hugging, by rubbing, flesh against flesh. The juice pours out. They reach the dark, never named before. They give it names from the past, forgetting them caught in the fire. They strip further through crying, moaning, screaming, to the nameless body beyond birth. Naked they are.
Anyway, my last try. Any more questions? Not perhaps only about poetry, or perhaps what is the most interesting for young people when they come to Slovenia, to Ljubljana. There's a wonderful lake, Bled Lake, seaside is very nice. And it's a small country, but very nice, and they call it the green land because it's really very green. And you all are mostly welcome in Slovenia.
And thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the talk, and thank you for giving us an insight to the Slovenian language. So the question I wanted to ask was, the poetry that you read in Slovenian language, was it initially written in that language and translated into English? And if so, what are the limitations when it comes to translating into English? Because when we heard it in Slovenian language, it was very rhythmic, it was very musical.
Yes.
But when the translation happens, I think something always gets lost, because as people say, something is lost in translation.
Yeah, I think that always is something lost in translation, because it's hard to catch, because Slovenian language has a lot of onomatopoetical words. Let's say in English you say kiss, yeah, it's kiss. But in Slovenian language is poljub. You can sound it like, yeah, and kiss, there's no kiss. Poljub, you have a kiss. Well, that is perhaps a joke, but it's true that it's hard. You can catch the meaning, but also is something when I read. Of course, I feel more comfortable in my own language, and I could put some accents and expression when I'm following the English, which is not my first language.
The poetry is exactly what is the language. So it's the totally of the rhythmic sound and the meaning. And to catch that in another language is really an art. And to have a good translation of poetry, it's really very rare. I think it has something to, it needs to happen something. So to recreate a poem in another language. So that's this kind.
I think that sometimes you have to sacrifice the part of meaning and to find the similar expression in another language, just to follow the rhythm or the melody or the power. And I remember sometimes I read, I think Mallarmé, it was twice, Stefan Mallarmé, translated from French language to Slovenian. The first book, it was by one only translator and not a poet, Marko Cankovic did that. And the second translation, it was by a poet. And sometimes I couldn't believe that it's the same poem, even I catch the meaning, but its translation from the poet, it was much more powerful. But it doesn't not follow, you know, word by word the meaning of poetry. Well, anyway, question for you. How does it Slovenian language sound for you? I saw a smile in your face, so I guess that you like it. I hope that.
Ma'ams, my question is actually to both of you. Can you talk a bit about the style you follow when you write your poetry? That's my first question. And we as youngsters, what advice would you suggest for us on behalf of the rules of poetry?
Oh, so for the style, I would say that each poem has to invent in its own style. So I don't consider that I'm writing the poem, but I'm like this doula, just witnessing the birth of a poem in a way. So if I write many different poems, and there are poems who have similar styles, but each is separate. So it's for myself, it's hard to speak about the style. So to invent new style for each period or cyclist of poems or each poem, And what about you? Sorry, style.
Well, I think that there's no style. Actually, every poem is a special style, and when I'm writing, when I get that feeling that poem is writing me, and that not I'm writing a poem, that suddenly I just listening the secret whispering coming I don't know from where, that I'm on a good way, and that I just only have to follow, and it's not allowed to stop at that time.
And for your second, for advice for a young writer, it's I usually just say, I just read and listen to yourself. So what your heart, your soul, your body, it has, if it has clear impulses, just follow this. Just follow and don't give up. That's very important, that you follow what you are interested and take in as much as you can differences and different styles and possibilities that these styles bring to you. This is, and then there are thousands of very concrete advices how in Slovenia, but I don't know what the system and what situation is here. But in Slovenia, I can give where to publish, how to start, what to do next, and some advices. I would do this. I was once with Richard Jackson, an American teacher of creative writer in academy, I mean in high school. And he said that as a teacher of writing, he has to put another head on his body, from his student's head on his body when he's reading his poem. And then he is from the inside of the poem, he's giving him very concrete advice on the poem, what to change, or whom to read. Because there are some, if you talked about styles, I would say some similarities between poets. Poets inspire each other, so that's important, that you get inspired by the others. So.
For me, is wondering. As children, we are wondering about a world behind us, around us. We have to discover what is hiding behind the things. They said that wondering is one of characteristic of poets, philosophers, and children. We have to allow it to be curious what is going on inside me, and trying to look around on a poetic way to catch some deep secrets of love, life and love.